Republican Senator James Lankford of Oklahoma will also be joined in a moment by Democratic Senator Jeanne Shaheen of New Hampshire. We'll talk in just a second about what's going on in Turkey. But first, Senator Lankford, just your basic view, your fundamental view on tariffs, good or bad?
Tariffs are bad, actually, for us long term. So the best thing you can have is to have low or zero tariffs. We don't have that with a lot of different countries right now where they still have high tariffs on us. The president's trying to push back and to raise tariffs on them to try to bring down both sets of tariffs. What we saw with the EU just in the last month was a push to raise tariffs. They came and responded by saying, let's try to be able to work towards getting zero tariffs as much as we can. That is much better for our economy long term because American products win when we compete globally and we get on a fair platform.
What's the specific implication of tariffs in your state? What are they doing in Oklahoma?
Oh, wow. Let me count the ways on it, whether it's agricultural products and slow down, because a lot of places that we put higher tariffs on automobiles or on steel or aluminum, they've reciprocated by raising tariffs on agricultural products. It's obviously raised the price of construction in my state. We were just talking about, and I just heard the conversation about oil and gas development. That's exceptionally important because almost all the downhole pipe in any oil and gas development is produced overseas. We don't make that kind of steel here in the United States, so it raises the cost of energy. So it hurts our consumers long term. If this is a short term fight that gets to a resolution, it's better for us long term. If this is a long term tariff war and trade war, that is bad for our consumers very long term and in the short term.
So, Senator, in the face of all that evidence that you just produced, the evidence we hear out of Iowa, the evidence we hear out of Maine and California and Oregon and everywhere else that's been hit by tariffs, why do you think the president continues to insist that they're a good thing for the American economy?
I think his focus is other countries have had high tariffs on us. We've had low tariffs on them. If he wants to get cheaper products to us, then he's got to drive their tariffs down. And so his focus is try to be able to raise tariffs on them, force them to the table to negotiate, and to try to get tariffs down on both sides of it. If that is successful, that's a long-term good for the United States. If it's not successful, then this is going to be an epic problem for us for a very long time in our economy. And just after the very positive economic news has come in on unemployment, on wages going up, on all that's happening after the change in the tax law, that could be diminished dramatically by trade issues.
Senator Lankford, it's Casey Hunt. Nice to see you. You all took a very abbreviated recess. You've been gone for a week and a half or so. And yet, in that span of time, the president has called Omarosa a dog, and now he has revoked the security clearance of John Brennan, the former director of the CIA. Let's just start there. I mean, is this an abuse of power? Bob Corker said this would be a banana republic antic. Do you agree with that? And should the Congress take steps to prevent this from happening again or to restore Mr. Brennan's clearance?
So the president has the authority to be able to do security clearances. That is within his purview of the executive branch to be able to do. It does seem sort of petty to have that kind of response. Obviously, John Brennan has come out and called the president treasonous and has just been on the warpath against the president. And the president has limited ways to be able to push back, and this is one of the ways that he's pushing back.
Is it petty, though, or does it amount to blacklisting a critic?
I don't think it's blacklisting a critic. This is somebody that's a former administration official that doesn't necessarily require to have a security clearance right now. So you're not really taking anything away from him in that sense. He's out of the administration now. So it's not like this is a day-to-day person that's dealing in the administration that you're removing clearance from. This is a former official that's left the administration that, quite frankly, doesn't need a security clearance anymore. So in some ways, it's a slap on the wrist because he doesn't need a clearance anymore to be able to live his private life.
We heard a couple of reasons for the revocation of the clearance yesterday. First, from the White House, Sarah Sanders said it was because, in part, of Mr. Brennan's, quote, erratic behavior and increasingly frenzied commentary. Is that a standard to take away someone's security clearance?
No, I don't know that that's a reason to take away security clearance. I think it's just a response from the White House to Brennan constantly on the warpath against the president all the time. And so the president's just responded to it in a way that he can respond to it. Do I think it's a great idea? No, I don't think it's a great idea. And I don't think it's a good way to be able to respond into it. I think the president can be above the whole thing and be the president and not have to go down to that level. But he's chosen to be able to respond to it and take away something that really isn't important for Brennan to have anyway.
So then we saw later in the day, the president did an interview with the Wall Street Journal where he said pretty explicitly that it was because of Brennan's pushing of the Russia issue. What about that as a standard for taking away security clearance?
No, again, I come back to the same thing. It's not really a standard. This is something that Brennan has called the president treasonous. He's called him all kinds of names. He's continued to be able to push it, and the president's just pushed back.
All right, Senator, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to bring in your colleague, Jean Shaheen. I believe she's arrived next to you there, and talk about Turkey when we come right back. Democratic Senator Jean Shaheen of New Hampshire joins us now alongside Republican Senator James Lankford. The two lawmakers have been leading a bipartisan effort to secure the release of Brunson and other Americans held in Turkey. Senator Shaheen, thank you for joining us this morning.
Nice to be with you.
Let's talk, just for viewers who may not be totally dialed into this story, who exactly Pastor Brunson is and why he's being held in Turkey.
Well, Pastor Brunson is a missionary who had been in Turkey for over 23 years when he was arrested in October of 2016. And he's been charged with totally trumped up charges in his indictment, suggesting that he was part of the coup attempt against President Erdogan. But there's no evidence to show that. And this is a man who loves Turkey. He's raised his kids there. And this is really an effort, as we've heard President Erdogan say, to exchange our pastor, Pastor Brunson, for Fethullah Gulen, who is the man that President Erdogan blames for the coup against him. So it's unfortunate that we are in this situation where it is escalated to the point that it's not in the best interest either of the United States or of Turkey. They should release Pastor Brunson. We made some progress when they let him out of prison and put him under house arrest, but it's time for him to come home and for them to release the other Americans that they're holding.
Senator Lankford, this has really escalated even in recent weeks here with new tariffs levied against Turkey. You have Erdogan saying that Turkish citizens should think about boycotting Apple products and getting rid of their iPhones or whatever else that is. What other leverage, what other pressure can the United States apply on Turkey and Erdogan to secure the release of Pastor Brunson?
Well, something Senator Shaheen and I have worked on for several months now is putting direct sanctions on those individuals that have actually imprisoned Americans in Turkey, some of the officials that are going through the trial, all these fake witnesses that they have created to be able to bring in fake evidence as they go through the process on it, put direct sanctions on those individuals. That's one. We've also had a significant push that we have led dealing with the F-35. Now, Turkey is a NATO ally, but currently they're not acting like a NATO ally. They're imprisoning Americans and just holding them for 2 years without any real charges. They've also worked with Russia, started purchasing what's called the S-400. It's a Russian missile defense system that's specifically designed to shoot down the F-35. So it seems very odd for us to be selling the F-35 to Turkey as they're working with Russia to be able to get Russian missile defense systems that are not interoperable with NATO systems. So there's a lot going on with Turkey right now, and quite frankly, Turkey's unrecognizable from what they were just 3 years ago when we had close cooperation with Turkey. But over the last several years, Turkey is transitioning dramatically away from the West.
Senators, Noah Rothman from Commentary Magazine. So as you said, we're putting a lot of pressure on Erdogan. He does not have the capacity to really put reciprocal pressure on us in terms of economic sanctions. But as we saw in 2016 during the coup, when the Turkish military surrounded Incirlik, our air base, cut off the power, they can apply pressure to us in a military sense. Do we have any sense that Ankara is preparing to respond in that sort of a way? And also, do you know how this row is resonating in NATO capitals, how London, Berlin, and Paris are reacting?
Well, we still have close military cooperation with the Turkish military, and that's important. As Senator Lankford said, Turkey is a NATO ally. They're an important NATO ally. They're a Muslim country. They have a very strategic location in the Middle East, and we need to continue this close relationship that we've had. And it's in everybody's interest to try and deal with these issues. Turkey needs to release Pastor Brunson and the Americans they're holding, and we need to get our relationship back on track.
Yeah, our push has not been to try to push Turkey away. It's we want our friend back. We don't recognize them anymore from who they have now become on it. So we want to continue to have this close cooperation. While they can put leverage on us, it would hurt not only them, but it would hurt the entire region to be able to isolate Incirlik Air Force Base.